Hi everyone, my name is Lucy Ann and this video is for the class I teach called Start Right Cast On. Casting on is the foundation of your knitting and there are several ways to do it. None of them are wrong. Some are perhaps better in certain situations, and this is just to demonstrate for after you've taken the class so you can see how each one is done. So the first one we're going to look at is the knitted cast on. Here it is. There's a little bright sunshine, so it's easier to see. And that's what it looks like. For the details, please refer to the handout in the class. To start, we make a slip knot and put it on your needle. Now, all of these videos assume you have some knitting experience, and I will try and demonstrate them in a couple of different knitting methods so you see the way you knit. We're going to start with the way I knit. So you have the slip knot on your left needle. You insert the right needle tip into the stitch. Grab your working yarn, pull it through, put it on the needle. Tighten up the stitch, not too tight. I tend to be a fairly loose knitter, and so I don't generally have to worry about that, but if you are a tighter knitter, please think about it. So then for this next stitch, making sure you can see this, insert the tip of the needle as to knit in the first stitch, pull your working yarn through, put it on your left needle. Insert the tip, pull the working yarn through, oops, insert the tip, happens to everybody. Pull the working yarn through and place it on the needle. Now, if you throw, or it's the same process, put the tip through the first stitch on the left needle, wrap your yarn around, pull it through, place the stitch on the needle. Right needle through, wrap it around, pull the working yarn through, and place it on the needle. That's a cast on lots of people learn as their first one. It's a very good beginner cast on because it's basically a knit stitch and then placed on the needle. You can also do it purlwise if you wish, if that's your preference, but we're just going to look at the knitted one. So that is the first one, the knitted cast on. The next one we're going to look at is another one that people often start with. Let me just leave these right out there. So it is the backwards loop cast on. And this is what the edge looks like. And it also is one that's often used by beginners. Okay. For the backwards loop, you take the tail, hold it in your left hand with the needle, take your thumb under the working yarn, over the working yarn, under, place the stitch. And then you do that again. Under the working yarn, over the working yarn, place the stitch. Thumb under the working yarn, over the working yarn, under the working yarn, place the stitch. So faster, it looks like this. Again, don't tighten it too much. This is a great one to use when you need to add stitches for in the middle of a row, or like at the end of a row, for example, like when you have to put the extra stitches on for a thumb gusset or for a under the underarm seam of a sweater. Under, over, so under, over, under, on. And that's what those look like. The next one we're going to look at is the regular long tail. For it, determining the length of your long tail is always one of the great mysteries of casting on. I typically, if I'm casting on 5 stitches, I take what I want my tail to be, that's probably about 4 inches, and then I wrap for each stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then because I'm paranoid, I do that. Yarn's not that expensive. To start, you make a slip knot, put it on your right needle, put your long tail over your thumb and your working yarn over your finger of your left hand, and you take your right needle under and catch the working yarn and bring it through. That's 1. You do that again. You have your fingers in the slingshot. I hold the yarns here through my fingers just to give them some tension. Under, and draw the working yarn through. Remember when you're watching these videos that you can slow them down, pause, whatever you need to do. And the details about when to use these various cast-ons and their attributes can be found in the handout from the class. So let's see, how many did we put on there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and I have lots of tail left. I would rather trim that off and save it to use for I don't know what later than be short on the long tail if I was doing it. The next cast on we're going to look at is the cabled cast on, and this is what it looks like on the edge. And like the others, to start, you hold your needle in your right hand, you make a slip knot, place the slip knot on and then your tail, I hold it together with my needle. That's quite a long tail, longer than you need. And you start. So the first stitch, you do a knitted cast on because you have to have 2 stitches on your needle for it to work. So you grab the working yarn, place it on the needle. Then this is where it differs from the knitted cast on. Again, if I'll try and do it using both methods of knitting, but you put the tip of your needle not not through the loop, but between the two loops on your left hand needle. Grab the working yarn and pull it between and put it on. Again, be careful not to make it too tight, and you do that again. You put your needle tip between the two stitches, so as you can see, it's not through anything. Around the working yarn, draw it through, and place it on the needle. Whenever you're doing these things, always be careful not to twist the stitches too much, like turn them and things like that. You want them to be as smooth as possible. So now doing it the other way, the other throwing style of knitting, you still hold the tail along the needle. I don't tension my yarn through all my fingers. I just sort of catch it with my pinky. Do the same thing, put the needle through, between the two stitches, bring the working yarn around the needle, and draw it through. These things are harder to do slow. I'm sorry to say. Okay, so I'm just going to do a few a little more quickly, and you can slow it down if you need to, but just so you see that there really is quite a good flow to it. Be careful not to split the yarn. This doesn't appear to be any quicker, does it? But that gives you an idea how it works. And there's no extra setup rows or anything, you just start knitting. And you can decide, this obviously, this is the front side and this is the, I say obviously, in my head this is the right side and this is the wrong side of the knitting. But always look at your cast on to determine which you would prefer to have as your right side and wrong side, because that's really what it is, preference. Okay, the next one we're going to look at is Old Norwegian, or the twisted German, some people call it. It is a long tail cast on. And here's what it looks like. So that's what it looks like. And these are all done into 1x1 ribbing. So determine how long you want your long tail to be. I'm just going to fudge it and make a loop through the slip knot, put it on the needle, hold your working needle in your right hand, your long tail over your thumb, and your working yarn over your index finger. You take your needle, you go under both yarns, come up in the middle between the working yarn and the long tail, down through the loop, grab the working yarn and pull it through. Again, you have your long tail on your thumb, your working yarn over your index finger, you go under both of the yarns on your thumb, come down through the loop of the yarn that's away from you, bringing it up under, that's the twisted part, catch the working yarn and bring it through. I don't think you can, this is the only way to do this. So long tail on your thumb, under, pretty fluid. When you start, you may have to stop more and adjust your stitches because you want them to be even but not too tight. And then you can just turn your work around and you'll see this is what the front looks like. Get that tail out of the way. And it actually looks like the wrong side. And often long-tail cast-on does. So you could, if you wanted, because you really have started your first row of knitting with the cast-on, you could do a wrong side row first. You have to figure, and of course when you're knitting in the round, it is a right side row that would be out. But you need to look at it and determine how you want your knitting to look at the beginning. That's why I recommend swatching with the type of cast-on you plan to use. The next one is alternating long tail. So this is particularly good when going into ribbing. So first you make a slip knot. Put the yarn on your needle. If you're working yarn away from you, the tail closer to you, and you go under. For the knit, you go under the front one, draw the yarn, working yarn towards you. So then for alternating, actually that one should have been a purl, right? Because the first slip knot is a knit, so let's change that. Because the first slip knot will act as your knit stitch, so to do the purl, which is what the alternating is, you go under the far yarn of the around your index finger and pull the tail yarn through, and see how that gives you like a purl stitch. And then you do a regular long tail, so up under the yarn on the thumb, grab the working yarn, pull it through, tighten it, and that gives you a stitch that looks like a knit stitch. And then the next one, you're going to go, this one, I find this one trickier, under the yarn from the working yarn, or the working yarn, grab the long tail and draw it through and tighten. Take your needle, go under the one the yarn closest to you on your thumb, grab the working yarn, pull it through. And you can see how the stitches lay behind, in front, behind, in front. So this time we're going to go under the loop or the yarn farthest away from us on the working yarn on your index finger, grab the tail yarn and pull it tight. Closest, grab the working yarn, pull it tight. Under the furthest, grab the loop, the tail yarn, pull it through, pull it tight. The yarn closest, it's regular long tail, pull the working yarn through, try and keep your tension even on both sides. And then this is set up for a knit one, purl one ribbing. So when you turn it around, because this is actually the wrong side, you turn it back, you're on the right side. and you can start with your, and it appears I have this one set up so it starts with a purl just the way I ended. So you purl one, knit one, purl one. See how the one stitch is more forward and the other stitch is set back. The back ones would be your purls, the forward ones would be your knits. The next cast on we're going to look at is alternating cable. I actually use this one a fair amount. Here's what it looks like. Oh, I didn't give you a good look of what the alternating long tail looks like. Here's the alternating cable. It's a nice solid feeling edge. And this one you don't need a long tail, so you just make a slip knot with enough tail to work in. I like to leave enough, especially at the top of a cuff or at the bottom of a sweater. I like to leave enough so that if I need to tidy up the join, if I'm working in the round, I have room to do so. So like the regular cable, you start with a slip knot, and then your first stitch is a knit cast on. So tip through the hole, through the stitch, bring the working yarn through, put it on the needle. Tighten everything up. So now your next one, so technically the slip stitch was a purl, this was a knit, so the next one you're going to do is a purl. Now you can do it the continental way, however I find that makes it a bit messier. Sorry about that, don't mean to make everyone seasick. So I usually do this cast on with my working yarn in my right hand. So you bring your needle through, because now we're doing a purled cable cast on. From the back to the front of your work, between the two stitches, wrap the yarn around as if to purl. You're going to be drawing the working yarn to the back and putting it on your needle. Then your next one is a knit cable, so that's the same as the regular cable stitch we looked at earlier. Take the tip of your needle between the first two stitches on your left hand needle, put it through, and bring the working yarn through and put it on top as your next stitch. So that one was a knit, so the next one's going to be a purl. So it comes from the back to the front with your working yarn in front of it. I don't want to split these. I've worked this same section of yarn a few times now demonstrating these cast-ons, and it's starting to split a little bit. Okay, so from the back to the front, between the first two stitches, wrap the yarn to purl, pull it out the back, and put it on the left-hand needle. I'm just going to do a few more so you can watch. A knit one, purl one, a knit one, a purl one. So when you go to work this, you want the if you want the first stitch to be a knit, you need to cast it on the last stitch needs to be knitwise. And then when we go to work these stitches, You can see how this one is to the front, it's a knit. This one's to the back, it'll be a purl. This one's to the front, it'll be a knit. This one's to the back, it'll be a purl. When you knit in the round, so if you were knitting in the round with this, the first stitch you cast on would be the first stitch you worked. And when you turn your yarn that way, you see it is a knit and this one is a purl. Because when we cast them on the other side, we did the slip knot and then a knit. So on this side, the slip knot is a purl, or is a knit, and the one that was the other way is now a purl. But they lay to the front and the back of the work, so you just need to read your knitting a little bit. You can see it there. So that's the alternating cable cast on. The next one is the slip knot cast on, and I will tell you straight up, I did this one just for this class. I have never used it in a garment, but I do like the way it looks. And you're going to practice different ones, and you're going to decide which one. I'm just going to go to a new section of this yarn since the other parts are getting a bit splitty. You just make a slip knot. That's how you start. And there you go. So you have one slip knot. Now you need another slip knot. And you do that by, like with the backwards loop, hold the working yarn. You don't need the tail, it can be held to the side. Bring your thumb under and up, go through the loop, and then catch your working yarn. You want these stitches stacked quite closely together, and there you've created another slip knot. So again, you go with the working yarn in your left hand, bring your thumb under, I did that wrong, with the working yarn in your left hand, you bring your thumb under from the back, put the tip through, with your index finger bring the working yarn up, grab it, stack it close to the other stitch, and tighten, but not too tight. What you don't want to have happen, let me get this tightened up a bit here. You don't want big gaps. Now there are some gaps here in between, but you don't want really big ones. Like those are probably okay. You can tighten them more if you need to. So you bring the yarn under from the back, or you bring your thumb under from the back, put the yarn, your needle through the loop on your thumb, using your index finger, bring the working yarn up, pull it through, stack it as close as you can, and tighten it in. Manipulate it if you need to. Thumb from the back to the front, needle tip through the loop, index finger brings the working yarn up, thumb under from the back, tip through the loop, bring the working yarn up with your index finger, and tighten. And that's what it looks like. So when you turn to work your ribbing, it looks like this. And these stitches sort of accordion on each other when you do them in knit one, purl one ribbing. It does have a specific look to it. You can see there are purl bumps on the right side. It's about what you like and how it behaves, whether you would choose to use this or not. I've not used it, but only because I had never done it before, like no other reason. Not that I dislike it, I just haven't used it, but it is very stretchy, which makes it really nice, as is the alternating cable and the alternating long tail. They're just slightly stretchier, but this is a very stretchy cuff. So then the next one we're going to look at is the Italian tubular. Now the Italian tubular cast on is a multi-step cast on. I have not stitched the tail in on this one on purpose, because you do work the first technically the cast on and the setup rows are worked flat, and then you join in the round and you can tidy up with your tail. It does give a very nice look. It feels really nice. It's like it's wrapped around. It's fairly stretchy. I typically use this on the bottom of a sweater or a cuff, or anything I'm going to use a sewn bind off or tubular bind off to finish my garment or my piece of work. So to start this one, I'm just going to refer to my notes to make sure I don't make too many missteps. There are other types of tubular cast-ons than this one. This is just the only one I've ever used. And because I didn't want us to get too detailed on using provisional cast-ons and those sorts of things, they're more advanced. These are all fairly easy cast-ons. So this one, once again, is a type of long tail cast on, but not as much as the other long tails. To start, make a slip knot. And you go you reach the needle up over the top of the working yarn, so you're going under the working, over the tail. And then you go under the tail, over the working. Under the working, over the tail, under the tail, over the working. Under the working, over the tail, under the tail, over the working. Under the working, over the tail, under the tail, over the working. Under the working, over the tail, under the tail, over the working. So that's step one, however many stitches you need. Hold the tail because there's nothing actually securing it, they're just wrapped around each other. And you pass the work, so you have your working needle in your left hand, or your stitches in your left hand, your working needle in your right. So for this one, you are now going to work 2 or 4 rows, depending on how thick you want that first section to be, and you'll see when you do it. So going this way to start, you are going to, I might have to do one more stitch. If you look at this, you can see that some sit ahead and some sit back. So this one's ahead, this one would have been back. I'm going to take this last stitch off so I end up with, so I can start with a knit. And you're just going to make sure your tail is secured. So you start and you're going to knit the first stitch, and you can do either type of knitting, it doesn't matter. Slip the next one, which would be with the yarn in front. Slip, bring your working yarn to the back, knit, bring your working yarn to the front, slip purlwise, bring your working yarn to the back, knit. Oops, making sure you actually knit. To the back, knit. Bring your working yarn to the front, slip purlwise, bring your working yarn to the back, knit. Oh, trying not to split the yarn. Knit. Working yarn to the front, slip, working yarn to the back, knit. Working yarn to the front, slip. So now you've worked half the stitches and slipped half the stitches. Now you turn your needle around. And so the stitches you worked are now purl stitches. And you do exactly the same thing. Knit. And you can tell by looking at them whether they should be knit or slipped. Yarn to the front, slip. Yarn to the back, knit. Working yarn to the front, working yarn to the front, slip. Working yarn to the back, knit. Working yarn to the front, slip. Working yarn to the back, knit. Working yarn to the front, slip. Working yarn to the back, knit. Working yarn to the front, slip. So now you have worked each stitch once after casting them on, which gives you this wrapped edge. You can do that, those same 2 rows again if you wish before joining in the round, or before starting the rest of your garment if you're working flat. This gives actually a couple of, basically what you're doing is double knitting those first 2 rows. So creating a front fabric and a back fabric. And it just gives it a little bit of structure and gives you that nice wrapped look. There's nothing hard about it. It's just getting your mind around how you're working those stitches to start. And I think I did it too on this just to give you an idea of how And if you were in the class, you would have had an opportunity to see this sample up close. So that's Italian tubular. So the next one we're going to do is Judy's Magic Cast On, and my tail's getting longer and longer as I try to get to not so split yarn. This Judy's Magic Cast On is for a toe up sock. It's a pretty basic one. I did 10 stitches for these ones, and I haven't done anything with my end. It's like my tail, it's just in there. So I haven't closed up any holes or anything. That is how this one just looks casting it on. So to do this type of cast on, you do need 3 needles. Because obviously if you're working a sock, you're going to use double points, or you're going to use, you could do it with magic loop. Then you would just need your magic loop needle or flexi flips or whatever's. But if you're doing it with, I just have double points here. So if you were doing this magic loop, I will explain what you would do when you got to that point. Or if you were using your flexi flips, which is a 3 needle system. So that's what it looks like. Again, with your you do a slingshot with your, some people do start with a slip knot, which I will do because I think that might be a little easier. I actually do not when I make it. So do a slip knot on the needle furthest away from. So you have your slip knot on the needle furthest away from you. You have your tail over your thumb and your working yarn over your index finger. And you take your 2 needles, the one closest to you, this one with not a stitch on it, and you go over the yarn, the working yarn, and under. And now you're going to put a stitch on the back needles. So you bring the tail between the 2 needles, over the back needle, and you have another stitch. You take the front needle over the working yarn, and you have another stitch. And then you bring the tail yarn between the 2 needles and over the back needle. You bring the working yarn over the front needle. You bring your tail yarn between and over the back needle. And you bring your front needle over the working yarn and in between. And you'll see you have 4 stitches on each needle. You cast on whatever number of stitches the pattern requires, holding on to your work. I usually like to end, so see I put the last stitch on the bottom needle. My preference is always to put the last stitch on the back needle if I can, which I guess could be done if you had the slip knot on your front needle. That would make it easier. So when you turn, holding your tail tight, because these stitches are not secured, they're just wrapped. This is the tail. It's very long right now, but and you have your work like this. This is going to be the toe of your sock. So if you were using magic loop, you would pull this needle through, so these stitches were on the cord and these stitches were on the needle tip. I'm just doing double pointed needles, So I'm working off this top needle. I put my right hand needle into the stitch created there, and I draw it through. This is actually easier to do magic loop than this way, but this is going to give you a better idea. And then you just tighten everything up, pull on the tail, pull on your working yarn to make sure everything is nice and tidy, and then do the next stitch, just a regular knit stitch. Put it through, wrap your yarn around, whatever knitting method you use, and bring it through. And it's just this first row that's a little tricky. And off. Be careful not to take the stitches off the other needle. And put the tip through as to knit. Wrap, bring the tip back, and off. I'm going to split that yarn a little bit there. Tip through, oops, poking you in the face with my other needle. Tip through to knit and off. So you've done one side. And then when you turn it over, or switch your needles if you're doing magic loop, and you do the same thing on the other set of stitches. Knit and off. Let me switch my working yarn to my other hand so you can see me do it the other way. Knit and off. Knit and off. Knit and off. Knit and off. And then you can tighten up that last one with your tail, and this is what it looks like. And you're actually working a front and a back, like this. And then you follow the instructions. And this would be used for toe-up mittens, or and increase on each end, or however, whatever the pattern says to do, and you carry on. The next one is the Turkish cast on, which is similar, but you'll see it's not quite as tidy. And no matter what I do, I can never get it tidier, so I end up often using my tail to tighten that up a bit. At the end, I just do a little bit of duplicate stitch, which reinforces the toe, but it isn't quite as tidy, but it is the same concept. So this is the Turkish cast on. Take these stitches off, and I am going to show you this one. On my flexi flips, just because I think it's going to be easier. So flexi flips are just like DPNs, except they're flexible in the middle, so you only need 3 instead of 4. And they're sort of a hybrid between double pointed needles and magic loop. So if you wish to start with a slip knot, which, you know, if you're not as confident in doing this, I would say isn't a bad idea, because it does secure the first stitch. And you could even take that slip knot out at the end and not knit it, just use it as a security blanket. But for the Turkish cast on, because it is for sure a simpler cast on, all you do is wrap the yarn around the needles the number of times you need stitches. So if you count the slip knot as the first stitch, now you have 2 on each, now 3, now 4, now 5, now 6, now 7, now 8, now 9, now 10. And you turn your work. You're going to start on the back needle. What I like about the flexi flips is I can now put the stitches that are closer to me in the flexible part, which gives me a little bit more room to work. And if you were doing magic loop, you would also have those stitches on the cord part, and you would be using this tip of a magic loop needle as your working tip. When you use these types of needles, often one tip is pointier than the other. I don't know if you can see that. And there's different, Hiya makes flyers, Addies are called flexi flips. You could do this using short interchangeables if you wanted. Like, there's a different ways you could do it, and I'm sure there's other companies that make them. And what you do, so you have your stitches here on your, you want to make sure that your working yarn is coming from under the needle that is holding the second half of the stitches, not the one you're working on. And you just knit whatever knitting method you use across each of the loops on the back needle. And it's just regular knitting. So essentially what's happening is the wrapping doesn't really create any stitches. It's this second step that creates the stitches. And we've come to that slip knot, which you may choose to knit as a stitch. I think we counted it, so we'll knit it. Or you can just not count it as the first stitch and pull it out. You don't want to leave it in because the knot would be hard on the toes. And so then you're going to turn your work, move the stitches you just worked to the middle of the needle they're on, whether it's a DPN or the cord of your magic loop, or in my case on my flexi flips. Get your tail yarn out of the way so it's not bothering you. And then with the working needle and your stitches, sorry, that was the dryer finishing, you're going to knit across these stitches in just the same normal way. And these stitches constitute the sole and the top of your toes in a toe-up sock, or the front and back of a mitten, or I guess you could probably start a hat this way, or any number of projects that call for this type of cast on. So there you go, and you've knit across. Now this one actually is pretty neat, but it still is not as tidy as the Judy's Magic Cast On. I keep that tail in the middle, and then you continue on increasing as you would for the toe. And that's how it's done. And those are all the cast-ons we talked about in class. And as always, if you have questions or want some help, I am happy to help you one-on-one if that's what you need. But I look forward to hearing from you about how you've tried a new cast on and what project you might have tried it on. And if you have changed your go-to cast on because of this. Now, I know if you were in class, you would have seen it, but this is the book that I particularly love for practicing my cast on and learning new cast ons and bind offs. And it is Cast On, Bind Off, 54 Step-by-Step Methods by Leslie Ann Bester. I did purchase it on Amazon. I don't know where else it might be available. It is not a particularly new book. Let me see what the copyright is in it. The copyright is 2012. So it's not a new book, but like lots of things in knitting, nothing changes. So thank you for joining me for my class, or if you just popped on to check out this video. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to leave them below. And if you enjoy what you saw, please subscribe to join me in all my knitting adventures. Thank you. Bye.